society, divided between a tiny rich elite and a poor working majority. While the haves and have-nots blame each other for initiating violence, it is the assassination in 1948 of a charismatic populist leader, Jorge Eliezer Gaitan, that leads to a social explosion that Colombians themselves refer to as La Violencia. With the backing of a conservative government, anti-leftist landowners and industrialists sent hordes of thugs against rioting students, workers, and peasants, forcing them to the countryside where they formed the first guerrilla movements. As the world seems on the verge of a global confrontation between capitalism and socialism, Washington makes it a priority to back a pro-Western Colombian establishment and train its military and so-called paramilitary groups to try to wipe out the now entrenched leftist guerrillas. Despite millions of dollars spent and the training of over 10,000 Colombian officers in counter-guerrilla tactics, the Colombian military never manages to prevail. In the early 80s, the war actually gets worse as narco-traffickers become players in this conflict with more money and sophisticated weapons. From now on, even though officially aimed against drugs, Washington's enormous infusion of arms and equipment to the Colombian military has been catalyzing a renewed assault against the leftist rebels.
The only impact that Plan Colombia has on the guerrilla is that there are more U.S. military advisors, more warplanes, more helicopters, more war. And every time they increase the war against the guerrilla answers with more war to defend itself.
Igualmente con más guerra para poderse defender.
If you call them narco-guerrillas, you can then turn on people that are prosecuting a civil war and consider them to be drug runners. And then you can use the same helicopters and weapons and pilots against the people in the Civil War saying, well, they're drug runners.
Unen dos variables como si fueran una sola.
They combine these two factors as if it was only one, the guerrilla and narco-trafficking. This is wrong because the guerrilla, for instance, in the Putumayo, was there long before the cultivation of coca.
What we do only is that we raise a tax on people who buy from the farmers. We do the same thing with the import and export of many other commercial products in Colombia.
La guerrilla tiene un proyecto.
The guerrilla had a political agenda that originally fitted the classic Marxist pattern of classless society, what is known as the proletariat dictatorship. Today, they don't stand for the same thing. Today, they are open to an agenda including economic, political, and social propositions to transform today's society.
De sociedad actual.
Colombia es una sociedad en conflicto.
Colombia is a struggling society.
Este país, todas las semanas,
in Colombia, every week, every day, there are strikes, demonstrations, roadblocks in the countryside and around cities. This is the result of a crisis, of the anguish felt by 22 million Colombians living in poverty. There are an additional 8 million Colombians who live in absolute poverty, and this gives us a total of 30 million Colombians out of a total of 40 million Colombians. Such a society is bound to generate discontent, political organizing, and social struggle.
Organización y lucha.
Many young people have opted for joining armed guerrilla groups. There are no real political alternatives, and often no other political groups. The mentality of Colombia doesn't allow for other solutions.
In Colombia and abroad, an enormous controversy surrounds the FARC guerrilla. It is seen by some as a popular movement of liberation for the poor, oppressed majority of Colombia. It is viewed by others as a criminal organization terrorizing the country. And indeed, while it is not clear exactly how involved the FARC is in the various aspects of producing coca and cocaine, it is a fact that the movement relies heavily on kidnappings and extortion to fund its activities. On the other side, the paramilitaries that are opposing them are much worse, carrying out assassination and massacres on a weekly basis and controlling a wide, vertically integrated portion of cocaine trafficking.
The official rhetoric tries to depict the paramilitary groups and their actions as if they were totally independent of the state, as if they were a third party within the conflict. This, I believe, is a false image.
There are entirely too many linkages between the paramilitary and the military, entirely too many documented cases of the paramilitary slaughtering innocent people, civil society people, with the military either knowing about it and not doing anything, or basically turning away from it, not going in to defend people. And I think that's unconscionable.
Lo que nosotros señalamos claramente en nuestro informe es
what we have clearly shown in our reports is the responsibility of the state in instigating paramilitary actions and letting them carry out atrocities, massacres, and assassinations.
Atrocidades, masacres, muertes selectivas.
Barranca Bermeja, a city entirely devoted to the oil industry, an hour flight north of Bogota. It is also a city in one of the most violent regions of Colombia. Once a stronghold of the ELN guerrilla, it has since been taken over by paramilitary militias that managed to kick the guerrilla out of town. The paramilitaries have been gradually murdering all FARC and ELN known sympathizers, to the satisfaction of the police and the army, who are essentially their allies against the leftist rebels.
There are some who say that Barranca Bermeja has changed. I'd rather say that Barranca changed leadership. Barranca's situation has changed. Nobody can dispute that. But in no way can anyone say that tranquility justifies massacres, assassinations, and social cleansing, as they say. And all of these arbitrary practices that we have to reject and condemn.
Que tenemos que rechazar y que tenemos que condenar.
In the last 2 weeks, 2 people of our project are being killed. A woman, Alma Rosa Jaramillo, who was a lawyer, she was killed. Her body was totally destroyed by the paramilitaries. And last week, Eduardo Estrada, a peasant, was also killed by the paramilitary groups.
About 80% of the extrajudicial killing and murdering of innocent people is now being done right now by the paramilitary.
We have had incursions of self-defense groups, but they were incursions directed at people belonging to subversive groups. The civilian population was not targeted. They came and they know why they were coming. They did what they had to do.
Los paramilitares están combatiendo.
The paramilitaries are fighting social and political organizations. What they want is not so much to rid the country of the guerrilla as it is to get rid of all workers' unions, of all peasant, indigenous or human rights organizations, of all political parties of opposition.
Partidos políticos de oposición.
We don't have institutions supporting us. For instance, I cannot go to the military to ask them to protect me or to protect the projects we are working with people in this area, because I can't trust them.